Hey folks, Dan here with LED4RV and TRV parts, and I want to do a short video on something that has a tendency to affect the older Airstreams, and it's something we call rear end sag. Now, when it comes to rear end sag, it mainly affected the 70s and early 80 models Airstreams, and basically there's been a lot of videos and tutorials that people have done to address the chassis and what's affected in that way, but I'm not going to address any of that stuff here. I'm basically going to talk about how this affects the lights and specifically LED lights, because I have a lot of people who will have a problem, and then all of a sudden when they get their LED taillight kit does not work, and it has to do with a bad ground. Now here's a wiring diagram of a 70s model Airstream, and you'll notice that I've got marked in red as ground, and there's a ground in the front and the ground in the back. And this whole wiring system is dependent on those grounds. They're grounded to the frame, and essentially the entire shell, the entire aluminum shell, is a ground. So this allows them to only have to run one wire. The problem is that if the ground gets corroded or doesn't connect real well, then essentially you don't complete the circuit. Now in that drawing, they have that marking for a ground there, and really about the only ground that these things had or needed back in the day when they were originally made was the way this trailer was attached to the frame. And over time, the corrosion there, rear end sag, corrosion at the light housing and whatever, with the sealer and the rivets getting loose, they would lose the ground. Now, electricity always seems to want to find the path of least resistance. And so what happens when you don't have a good ground, you have a backfeed, and most of the time it's into your running light, because that's a circuit that's always tied to that light. And so you'll have a very dim tail light, and that's the idea that, hey, I need to get some bright LEDs. And then when you get the LEDs and put them in there, they don't work, because the nature of an LED is diode, and it only goes one direction. So it's either backfeeding or it's spread out the current over all of the running lights and the stop, tail, and turn light to the point that you don't have enough current, or essentially voltage, and you have a voltage drop, and then your lights don't work. Well, that was a lot of information all packed into a little thing, and so if you didn't understand what I was talking about, the good news is you don't need to. Now here's the fix. I always suggest that people do a temporary ground from the light to the frame. You're not going to leave it there, but just to run a wire so that you know that you're barking up the right tree. So you get an LED, install it on your trailer, it's not working, you run the temporary ground, and then you now see that it is working. So then you can devise a plan for running a permanent ground that's not on the outside, and it's a lot more cosmetic and looks a lot better. You know, sometimes people will run it on the inside of the wall. Now, if that doesn't fix it, it's still a ground problem. It's the front ground. And so what you're going to want to do is go and check the connection that comes in off the umbilical cord. And however that connects, it's several different ways for several different models. Sometimes there's a plug that goes on behind the gas bottles, and sometimes there's a wire that goes underneath the trailer and it goes up into a junction box. But you check those grounds, connect all those, reconnect them, clean them off. They're usually there and in good shape, but they just need cleaning because they've got some corrosion. And then your 7-way going up to your tow vehicle. Now here's a picture of the 7 spade and the locations on it, so you'll know which wires that you need to clean up to make sure that you've got a good connection. Now, if all this seems like too much information and you've come to the realization that LED taillight kits are just too nice to not partake in, and not to mention the safety factor, if you get one of ours and you start having problems with it, we definitely will be more than happy to help you troubleshoot over the phone. So anyway, thank you for taking time to watch our video. Comments, remarks are welcome, and as always,